Hello. What's up? How's it going? Welcome to Finsweet Live. Today we're talking client-first sales. Client-first isn't only a way to build your Webflow project, it is a way to sell more leads on building in Webflow. So that's what we're going to talk about today. I'm joined with Jesse Nieman, who is a PM at Finsweet, and I would even say our technical PM. He deals with our most complex.
Hey, I will. I think you just tossed it to me. I will say I just lost your audio, so I don't know if that was me or you.
Wow, that was totally me. I did not unpress the mute.
No
Geez, sorry.
worries.
Wow,
We'll run it back.
Our watch count. Yeah, our watch count just died there. That's my bad. I'm sorry, everybody. Okay, so let me start from the beginning here. Client first. There's a lot more to client first than there's a lot more to client first than just the naming convention. We are going to talk about sales today. We are going to really get deep into getting our leads excited about client first and using it as a sales tool in the Webflow sales process. So today I'm joined with Jesse Nieman, the PM, the technical PM at Finsweet. He deals a lot with our complex clients, our complex projects. So Jesse, what's up? How you doing?
Good. How are you?
Great.
Awesome.
I'm doing well now. Yeah. And this is your first live.
This is my first live with
Cool.
Finsweet, so I'm very excited to be on and share some insights and stuff we're learning.
Awesome. Before we get into the content, before we talk about client first and sales, we're going to say hello to the audience. So let's bring some comments up on the screen here. John Saxton, what's up? How's it going? Great to see you in here. We have Susan. Hello. This is going to be good. I agree. Duncan Prince. Oh, yeah. Nice. Welcome. Zach Bujasia. Good morning. Hello. Anaye. Hello. Greg Dolan. Hello. Listening on the drive home from work today. Wow.
Nice.
Drive home. It's an early drive home. Great. Okay. Vishal. Hello.
Vishal, how's it going?
Hello, Tonette. How are you? Let's bring up one or two more. Dale Jensen. What's up, Dale? Great to see you. And we do one more from Supercharged Studio. Thanks in advance for this one. Great. Okay, so let's get into client first. And the first thing we're going to do is give you a definition of client first. We're going to jump to the screen share here right inside the client first documentation page. This is finsweet.com/client-first. This is the intro page. And we're just going to read through one section here to make sure we understand what client first is. Client first, the term means we put our clients' interests first in the Webflow build process. By making our clients our top priority, we have created a style system that satisfies their needs and makes us better Webflow developers. Creating neat and organized and scalable projects equals good developer. That works in any kind of development instance. If you create a project that other people can use, other people can manage, other people can scale, this is a huge positive. So not only does this help our clients, but it is also giving us the knowledge we need to create these types of projects. Most clients want us to create a scalable Webflow project, create a project quickly without losing quality, create a project that many people within our agency can manage, create a project that can be handed off to a different Webflow developer or agency if the client decides to change vendors, which is okay. We're okay with this. And we want to set that person up for success in changing a vendor for whatever reason. And last, create a project that a client can manage inside Designer. With the big asterisk, not all clients want to manage their Webflow project. Some do, some don't. So, Jesse, you remember when we released Client First V1, we talked a lot about clients managing the Webflow project. And that was like kind of some of the meaning behind this Client First. But since then, we've kind of changed the definition to more like this. So I'll ask you right away, do you find most clients don't want to edit their Webflow project? They want Finsweet to build it and Finsweet to manage it.
Yeah, I would say it is a good majority that don't really want to have their hand as deep into the project as we would anticipate them having it in. So yeah, I think our shift from V1 to V2 going, our approach with V1 was very much, we want our clients to be able to build in their website, once we hand it off to them. And we realized and learned, some of them just want, a well-structured website, and then they still want us to come on and do some maintenance. So V2 really did have a focus on, one, how do we satisfy the client's needs? And then two, also, how do we make something that developers can use and become better developers with?
And that's what these points are right here.
Yeah.
We'll add 5 in there, but 1 through 4, that's what everybody wants, right? Everybody wants this. We want it, the clients want it, the leads want it, everybody. So yeah, this is kind of the reimagined definition of client first. It's not completely different. It's just more encompassing. It's more broad in its meaning.
Yeah, and I think we do have some clients, that are a bit more technical and they still want to be able to go in. And so client first does serve them well because they can do that. And then we also have clients that are maybe not as technical or just want, a development partner, and client first is still great for them. So it's a good broad range.
Creating a project that allows for scalability and flexible post-launch management significantly benefits any client company using Webflow. Now, Jesse, I would have to think that you agree with this statement that every client wants scalability and flexible post-launch management. So can you talk about any experience you had where somebody was not using client first and the project was really messy and we had to turn it away because we look at it and say, we're not managing this project. We have no idea what it is. We have no idea how it works. And it's very confusing. It's not clear exactly the structure of these classes. So do you come into these as well?
For sure. Yeah. And I think this is probably something that other people, other Webflow developers have experienced as well. Sometimes we'll get a project that's already built in Webflow, and maybe, the team just kind of threw it together. They were trying to build an MVP. They knew it wasn't going to be the best, and they came to us and, they wanted the more polished kind of redesign maybe, or just a rebuild of the current site. And most of the time, we'll just tell them it's going to be way faster and more efficient for us to actually just build it from scratch. And we won't go in and actually, kind of build on top of their existing project. And it's actually going to save them money in the long run too, because we're going to spend less time building than we would if we were jumping in, to their project and to whatever system they were using, because we're actually using a system that we know really well and will be much, much quicker in the development cycle than we would if we were just jumping into their code, basically.
Totally. And we we even have a page in here that explains that specifically, that usually it's just better to build it from scratch.
Mm-hmm.
if there's no organization system, I'm not saying every
Yeah,
project that isn't client first needs to be rebuilt. That's not the
totally,
message.
totally.
The message is when you have no organization, no class system, no organization strategy, that's when a project you just don't want to go into it. Doesn't matter how experienced you are in Webflow. Maybe the more experienced you are, the less interested you are in going into that messy project. So by
Yeah.
creating this kind of system, we're allowing more people to build in the same way and more people to say, yes, I'd love to jump in that project. This feels native to me.
Hmm. Exactly. Exactly.
Nice. All right, let's take down the screen share and let's continue this conversation. Audience, please ask questions. If you have questions about you selling client first, experiences you've had in the past, anything you want us to cover, let us know. This is going to be a very open and flexible conversation. We have a few talking points, but we're totally ready to switch any of those talking points to answer your questions. So, Jesse, uh, you're selling client first.
Yeah.
Like tell me about that kind of process. How are you selling client first? Or are you
Yeah.
selling client first? I guess that's the
Yeah.
question.
Yeah. I think that's the important question is, I put out a tweet last week at some point, asking when you're selling client first to clients, if you're using it, what are you saying? What is that process like? And I was actually surprised. Some people, don't even mention it. They don't mention that they use client first. It's just kind of one of their practices at their agency or as a freelancer. And so the first question is, are you selling client first? I can remember. I think it was. I'm forgetting the name. Somebody we know, and they said they don't. Once they get into kind of the sales process, they will actually mention it as a sales point, as a selling point. So I think that's interesting. You can you can take this tool that you're using and you can either not mention it or you can bring it up and use it as a selling point, a way to actually bring that client in, and kind of add some authority there.
And it would be silly for you to not sell it. Like if
Hmm.
you're using client first, if this is something you're already doing, just work it into your sales process. It's a little bit extra trustworthiness that you can sell to your client. So I say always bring it up. I don't think there should ever be if you're a client first user, there shouldn't be a place where you say, you know what, I'm not going to sell client first. Whether it's a
Hmm.
technical person, a non-technical person, everybody can find value in those points that we brought up earlier. We did the screen share, what clients want the most. I'll go and share this link in the chat. And this, everybody can appreciate this. Technical,
Hmm.
non-technical. So let's go into talking about who we're selling client first to, right? Because sometimes we're selling client first to somebody who knows nothing about Webflow, super non-technical, sometimes really technical people
Yep.
or developers that may look down on Webflow. So who do you sell to? I guess that's a good way to start that.
Yeah. Yeah. I think for most of the time, we're probably selling to a client. We're either a freelancer or we're an agency, we're Finsweet, and we're talking with a client. We're trying to win a project, and we're bringing up client first, kind of as this bonus piece. This is how we're going to build in the project. Um, so you have a couple different types of clients. I think a lot of times, maybe you have someone that's maybe not as technical. They have a web team, or they're just on a marketing team, or maybe they're just a small business owner and they're coming to you and saying, "Hey, I need a website," whatever it may be. And so when you're thinking about that non-technical person, you have to think about what are going to be the benefits for this person. And so you can talk about things like scalability. You can talk about how clean it's going to be, things like that. And I don't know if you want to mention any thoughts before we talk about more technical clients, Joe.
I love to talk about technical clients. These are turning
Sweet.
into be some of our favorite projects, the more technical ones. And this doesn't
Yeah.
necessarily mean JavaScript or anything. It could be just a project that has a complex setup.
Hmm.
And yeah, you have something to say to that?
No, yeah, it just a complex setup. Maybe the CMS is really complicated. It's just a big
Yep.
project, something like that. Maybe they have a ton of pages. These are, the projects that you can go in and say, okay, I have a system or a tool that I will be able to offer as, something that's going to help clean this up as a big project. And then also make it so that this client can scale their business down the road without having to come through and rebuild a bunch of stuff on their website. So, you know, as we're talking about technical clients, I think one thing that we've seen is that I would think, initially that the non-technical clients would appreciate client first more because they can look into the project and see kind of element by element, understand what is going on. This is a padding div. This one is the component. This is a section, and so on. Um, and what we've all actually found is that our technical clients, maybe that are coming from a more developer background or they've worked with Webflow for a long time, they actually seem to appreciate client first even more. And I think the reason is that a lot of people are coming from a development, maybe it's traditional background. We were talking about this before the stream. They are actually used to having some sort of industry standard, whether it be a framework or some type of structure standard of practice to follow when they're writing code. So client first kind of serves that role for them when they're looking at Webflow and building in Webflow.
And technical people love documentation. This is a
Yeah,
core principle of developing on the web or apps or whatever you're developing. More documentation, more adoption is hugely beneficial to the platform being used, to the system being used. So React may not be the best front end framework, but it is because it has the most documentation. It has the most usage. If you have a React project, it's much easier to find another React developer. It's much
that's
more
huge.
difficult to find a developer that has this niche, really specific knowledge in some sub framework. So
Yeah.
our we have extensive documentation so that we really outline everything about the system and to show people that this is documented. Our clients look at that documentation and say, wow, there was a lot of thought put into this. And there
Hmm.
was. So the technical people love this. They love the idea that
Yep.
someone non technical can understand it. And they love the idea that there's extensive documentation, examples, and even tech. We'll probably
Hmm.
talk about that later, but the idea that tech, an actual application, is involved inside the client first naming convention. So awesome. This is
Yeah.
this helps us adopt bigger projects because bigger projects want to hear that you have a strategy. They want to hear that you have this way to manage a project of any size.
Hmm.
So, yeah, Jesse, how do we do this with scalability? Client
Hmm.
first, big project. How do you sell that scalability side of it?
Yeah. So I think one project that comes to mind that we recently launched was Suna. I think it's Suna.co. And great website, great company to work with. Um, our rep with them, our kind of main point of contact, was very technical, had a very traditional technical developer background. And so when we were showing him client first, he appreciated it a ton. And there were definitely like moments where he, looked in, he had to learn it. And then once he learned it, he saw the value and was able to then, go in and actually build some components without even coming to Finsweet. You know, he was immediately empowered and had a structured system that he could go in and he was writing, relatively clean client first right away with, just the documentation and some of our help here. Um, which kind of brings up a point. Like one of the things that I think he found value in was that technical people like him, they also like the idea that they can pass the website down the line to maybe the marketing team or other less, the content team, less technical people that also need to interact with the website. So this is one of the big pros of working with Webflow just in general. And I think client first allows you to take it even a step further and kind of open the door for people to do that. So then it's not a bottleneck with this, our point of contact at Tuna. He now has the ability to open that website up to his team, and his marketing team, his content team. They can jump in and they now have the ability to add to the website as needed as well.
It's nice. It's nice how low the learning curve is for someone to be able to do that. In the beginning of the episode, we talked about how not all clients want to manage their project. And that's fine. We're ready for
Mhm.
that. But then we see a client like this, they want a clean base, they want to be able to add on top of it, and they were able to adopt client first, probably without reading all the documentation, right?
Yep.
You don't have to read all the documentation to understand client first. You need to read the intro page, you need to look at a couple clonables, maybe get a Loom video recorded from someone who knows the system, and you can start using client first. You may not be a super pro, but you can start managing the website that we have built for you in client first. So that was a great story. I love that.
Yeah. And I
And
think
let's yeah.
I think another observation too that is maybe not necessarily completely related to client first, but it definitely helps is some of these more technical clients, they've typically asked us to build in components. So we might have a
Yeah.
page on the site that will build a few components out, and then the client can down the road go ahead and take those and they can craft new pages on their website as needed. And it's just using clean client first. So yeah, that's definitely a big pro for sure.
Let's
Um,
take a break now.
awesome.
Let's jump into the questions. We have some good questions from the audience here. So let's first, this is a tough one. Shane O'Mac 151. I jumped in a few minutes late. Can you give an example elevator pitch of how to sell client first? Well, I guess that's not a tough one, but I'm just going to, create. Jesse, do you have an elevator pitch, or should I just make one up right now?
I think
I
we'll talk about like how Finsweet talks about client first here later in the
Yeah.
stream. But go for it. I can share if it's needed as well.
Let's see. Okay, let's see if I can do this. I have been out of the sales game for almost a year and a half now.
And I
Feels
think
good.
contextually too, let's kind of determine who you're talking to as well. Are you
Yeah.
talking to a client that? Are you talking to a client? Are you talking to a boss,
Yeah.
teammate? Um,
Nice.
is it somebody who's more technical, less technical? So I'll give you an example. Let's say it's a small business owner. They're not super technical, but they know that they need something scalable.
Great. Okay. So I would say client first is a style system in Webflow, an organization system that we can use to organize all of the styles inside your project. So when we build in Webflow, we're adding elements to the page, we're making all of these structures, and to make them different colors and to make them different sizes and different shapes, we use client first. And client first is a system to organize all of those styles and all of those shapes. So by using this system, we're not only giving you an organization system, but we're also onboarding you to a system that is the most popular in the Webflow ecosystem right now. That there are a lot of people using client first. We're even seeing it in job listings. This is that was a little side note, not part of the pitch, but we're seeing it in job listings. That's amazing. So there's other developers out there that use client first. It's a trusted system, and it was created by Finsweet. Use our social proof. We're going to talk about this. We have this in our notes as a whole section. Using Finsweet social proof, we give the check of approval, and if you're a smaller agency, that's nice to say that this
Yeah.
company, which makes huge websites for huge companies, built this system, and I'm making your small website, local business website, and look how powerful this is. So that's kind of what I'm going for. It's an organization system, kind of break it down into a simple way to explain it. It's a way to organize all of the visuals, the colors in your project, the structures in your project. And then get into the social proof, if that makes sense for your agency. And it depends on your agency, but to lean on others and to say, hey, Facebook built React. It must be legit, right?
It's got to be.
Facebook built it. So it's not just some random person and one person manages and uses React. There's a huge ecosystem of people that are using React, and we're now seeing that with Client First. So that's social proof. You add that in there, and along with the, hey, I'm doing this to help you and organize, plus other people do it. This isn't just me coming up with some wild idea. That's a nice win for a non-technical client. I hope that was a good answer, Shane O'Mac 151. Jesse, what do you think? What do I get out of a 10 for that?
I would say at least a 9 for sure. I think you brought up a
Nice.
lot of good points. One, I think what was nice was you simplified it. You talked about shapes and colors instead of like CSS properties, because they don't care about CSS properties. So using language that was familiar was helpful. I think bringing up the fact that down the road somebody else could pick it up and somebody else's knows Client First. There's other people that know it, and then also talking about the authority behind the creators of the tool. So I think those were all good points.
Nice. Okay, I'll take the 9. I like that. Let's bring up the next comment from Content Nest. Does Client First approach have any change or benefit in editor or CMS usage? No, not specifically. There's nothing specific about editor that Client First deals with, because editor is not class-based. It's specifically not, there's nothing to do with classes in editor. And CMS, really the same thing. There's nothing that I would think that's organized for CMS, other than maybe using the CMS template page, the collection name, as a folder, maybe something like that. But traditionally, no, it doesn't change or benefit those two things. You agree, Jesse? Any comment for that?
Agree. I had another thought, but it's gone, so we can move on.
That happens. Let's bring up from Susan. Susan, I just tell my clients that's how I develop and send them the Client First link, but I don't hear back saying how awesome that is, but they should.
Nice.
Yeah. So you can send it in a link. They may check it out. They may not. Just the fact that they may just open it, look at a documentation page and say, whoa, this is huge. Great. Just the concept of having a lot of documentation plus the social proof, that makes a lot of people happy. So maybe they're just doing that. Maybe they don't click on it. Honestly, I'd film a Loom video. If you can do a personal Loom video for that company, that's epic. If you want to just film one and send it to everybody, that's fine too. But Susan, imagine instead of sending that Client First link, you send a video of you doing a quick overview of Client First. I'm talking less than 1 minute. Hey, I use Client First. It's really easy. There's a huge documentation. Look at this project from another company I built for, or a sample project. Look how easy it is to navigate. Look at the folders. This is the system. Finsweet uses it. Great. Check. So now in a minute, you just sold it super hard, and now they need to work with you. They don't want to work with you. They're like, no, this Client First thing, we want this. That's what you should be, inviting in the sales process, that you bring somebody so much value that they come back and say, wow, I need this. This is exactly what I'm looking for. This company is going to make it happen.
Yeah.
Jesse, what do you think?
Yeah, I think doing something like that, either talking about it on a sales call or sending a Loom video, shows two things. One, it shows intentionality that, you as an agency or as a freelancer have done your research. You've looked for clean ways to build, and you've landed on something that you like. and then also shares that you care about the client long term, because you're choosing when you communicate, hey, this is going to help you scale, this is going to help you go into the build later on, this is going to help you hire developers in the future. That shows a lot of care for your client. So that's a huge win for sure.
Huge win. Love it. Let's bring in this nice comment from Joseph. Hey all, what's good? Jumping in late. Glad to see Jesse still rocking his effing sexy stash. Had to bring that up.
That's
Nice.
amazing.
Thanks, Joseph.
Thank you for that.
Okay. Duncan Prince, this is cool. I've just landed my first real Webflow project. In pitching the benefits of Webflow, the client first aspect is what excited the client the most. Nice.
Nice.
Duncan, I'd love for you to maybe share a little bit more of that story. We can bring it up and maybe that can help other people. What did you do to make that person so excited about client first? What did you say?
Yeah, and also why was the client excited, or what specifically were they excited about? I would be
Yeah.
interested to see that for sure.
Jesse, great question for you. Content Nest says, how do you teach client first to content and marketing teams?
Yeah. So I think um, a question is, are they going to be actually using, a content team maybe is just going to be for the most part in the editor. So maybe they don't need to know much. But definitely, a marketing team might have a couple developers that are going to be managing the website and so on. I think you teach it from the docs. I think you go in, you share it, and there are different ways to learn. I think some people are going to be able to read the docs and learn it pretty well. And then also, I think there are some people that are going to be more visual. I think a lot more people probably are visual. And so I would send them YouTube links. You could even, if you've already got an existing website that's in client first, you could just record a Loom walking through some of your project and just explain this is kind of the core structure. So every section has these components or these divs with these classes in it. And then you have your component structure. This is kind of how the folder system works. And then the third thing I would say is the Reloom library is actually a good way to learn client first pretty quickly. And I've heard that from several people. So just copying a component, pasting it into Webflow, and kind of analyzing and looking at how is this component built? What's the structure? What class naming did they use? You can kind of start to see and understand the pattern after you've seen several of those and started to use them in a project. So I would definitely recommend that.
And you can send them all of that, right?
Yeah.
Everything that Jesse said, you don't have to just do one of those. So let's say offboarding a client or onboarding the client to a project, kind of handing it off for good. You send them the docs, you send them the recorded video, ideally of their project.
Hmm.
You could send it of a past project for a lead, but onboarding, just walk through the project and say, look at these folders. Look at the organization here. Look what happens if I want to add a new component to this page. And in 10 minutes, you can give them a good overview of what that is. So I would say everything Jesse said, you can combine all of that into one training, either before the sale or after the project is done.
Yeah.
And people will click on what they want, right? It's not intended
Right.
that maybe 5% of clients will read all the docs, but that's good that
Hmm.
somebody is reading that, understanding it, enjoying it, and now being able to go and completely manage the project.
Yeah. And I'll say one thing that we do sometimes with clients that we know are going to be managing and kind of taking on the website themselves after we build it is we will get on one or two kind of hour-long training sessions with the developer who built the project, talking to the team that's actually going to be using it and maintaining it. Just talk through everything. So that, includes client first, but also just the rest of the site. How is it kind of put together? What's the CMS structure? So client first kind of comes into that conversation. But yeah, those kind of after the project launch training meetings are really helpful.
Let's bring up this question from Vishal. Vishal asks, do you ever see people taking client first upstream into Figma designs? I'm guessing you're asking about do people use client first naming in Figma to then build that in Webflow? I don't think so. I've seen a couple of people say that they use client first naming in their Figma project, but not specifically for that transition. Have you seen that, Jesse?
No, not particularly. Most of the designs we get are coming from either a design agency or some designer in house for a company that we're going to work with. And they typically don't know about client first when they're designing in Figma. I think the closest thing you can get is probably going to be the Reloom Figma component library. Um, and I don't know if that's explicitly like if the frames and each kind of like folder layer is in client first. I'd have to look at it. I haven't looked at it in a minute, but I think that's probably going to be the closest. But I'd be interested to see if that's a helpful thing for some people.
I would like to see that too. At least naming on the folder level, right? Maybe not
Right.
exactly client first, but kind of organizing your folders in the design process could be very cool. Okay, let's bring up this comment from Eric Mueller, and then let's continue on. Eric says, how do you handle those clients that want pixel perfect, but you think taking that route is pointless and would still make the build worse? And let's bring up the next comment from John Saxton, which I really like the answer of. So John has answered this in his own way.
Cool.
John says, Eric, personally, I handle that with a strong drink, but the real answer is I point out inconsistencies in design and ask if they want me to keep it pixel perfect or make recommendations for consistency.
Nice.
Yeah, point out inconsistencies. That I think is the best way to do it. Now, if somebody is asking to be pixel perfect because that's what the Figma shows, and it's reasonable to ask for it to look like the Figma, I think that's okay.
Yeah.
Uh, asking for really high attention to detail is okay. But Eric, it kind of sounds like this type of client is asking for the smallest little details. Move this over 1 pixel, that over 2 pixels, this over this. And if that's the case, then yes, point out the inconsistencies. Every button has this amount of distance from another button. Why are we changing it for this? Every heading has this amount of distance from the paragraph text. Why are we changing it for this? So inconsistencies, that's the best way. That's how you tell a client, hey, you should not be doing this. This is not the way that a website is supposed to be built.
Hmm.
You have anything to add to that, Jesse?
Yeah, and I would also say, client first. It's definitely easy to go ahead and just leave it as it is when you open up that style guide and you're in a fresh Webflow project, and you're looking at all the kind of pre-built client first styling and everything like that. The cool thing is you can go in, and if you have a custom container width that your project requires, you can go ahead and edit that. So your container medium class doesn't necessarily have to be the exact width and rems that we have it in the style guide. It could be what is required for your design and so on. So you can go in and change all those classes as needed. Obviously, keeping in mind that you need to keep a clean structure and it has to make sense in the long run for sure.
Okay. Part of me wants to continue with some of these notes that we have, and part of me wants to continue going with these comments. We have some great comments from the audience here.
Nice.
Um, let's bring this up from Pablo Cortez. I have to totally disagree with this. Pablo says, I feel that talking about your naming convention is TMI for clients unless they ask for it. Well, I don't think so. And Gabe, let's bring up the screen share again. The screen share shows that client first is about the interests of our clients and that most clients want us to do these things: create a scalable project, create a project quickly, create a project that many people within our team or agency can manage, or create a project that can be handed off to a different Webflow developer. All right, let's close the screen share now. So, Pablo, I think it's super important because it's almost like the strategy and the materials used to build the Webflow project. So if someone's paying you to do something for them, they should get the best service, the best product. They should know in this context how things work in some respect. So if they're moving on from you and they're going somewhere else, it's really helpful for someone to say, "Hey, I'm built in client first, and there's a whole bunch of job postings about client first." So I disagree with this. Of course, you can have your opinion here, but if you're using client first, I think it's just a big win to mention that in the sales process. It's going to help you do those four things we brought up on screen, which is of high interest to that client or lead. Jesse, I see you're agreeing with that. What do you think?
Yeah, and I think it could be even as simple, like, one, it comes down to knowing what kind of client are you talking to. You know, if they're more technical, I'm for sure going to talk about client first, because I know that they're going to care about that kind of stuff. If they're less technical and I think they won't really understand the potential value of client first, then, maybe it can be a much shorter conversation. But I think bringing it up, it does show that you care for the client and showing those benefits. It could be as simple as, hey, here's a link to the style system we're going to build in. This is something we've chosen to use because we know it's scalable and it can hand off well to other developers. Done. So simple. They could glance over it. They can look at it if they want. You've done your due diligence and you can move on. So I think, something as simple as that is nice.
Totally agree. Okay. That's how we think about it. Hopefully by watching this episode, that's how you're starting to think about it. And I want to continue going through these chat questions, but we're not going to do that. We're going to continue on with some of these more show notes that we have. So if we missed your question or it wasn't in there, sorry about that, but we're going to continue. Let's
Nice.
talk about some of the value coming from client first. We talked a lot about scalability. We talked a lot about handoff. Let's now talk about more of this social proof concept, and let's talk about the tech behind client first.
Yeah.
So, social proof. We touched on this a little bit earlier, but I want to bring this up again because I think it's super important, especially for new people. If you only have a
Mhm.
few projects in your portfolio, people may not trust you. But if you have the social proof of a company that is 7+ years experienced, this gives you a little bit more trustworthiness. So, Jesse, talk about this social proof. How can people use Finsweet in their sales process?
Absolutely. So, this is even one thing that we have mentioned on the actual client first kind of landing page. So, in a website structure, the landing page is probably going to be kind of more of that selly page. It's this marketing piece. So these are some of the points that we've brought up. So one thing is that thousands of devs already use it. Companies have added client first as required skills on job posts. So on LinkedIn and other job forums, we've actually seen client first as a skill requirement, which is really cool. Other agencies use it. So plenty of agencies I know, like Hedrick and Ammo. These are friends of ours that use it. Um, Finsweet uses it, so you can kind of borrow some of that authority of Finsweet and say this is a trusted, well-known agency that has worked with X companies. Maybe you can name drop some of those if you want, and say Finsweet uses this. They've created it. Another thing to mention that you can bring up is the largest Webflow component library, which is Reloom library, is built using client first. So when clients are thinking about how do I go on and build a component in the future, or how does my team scale and build quickly, Reloom library, it's a great resource. And then kind of on the job uh, topic, there are actual job boards, entire job boards dedicated to posting and finding Webflow developer jobs that require client first experience. So that's kind of a crazy thing for us at Finsweet to see, but there are literally job boards out there that are dedicated to client first Webflow developers. So these are kind of some of the points that you can tug on. And one of the questions, I was at a Webflow meetup this weekend in Tampa, Florida, and got to connect with some really cool people out there. And one of the questions they asked was, why are these things that Finsweet's putting out, why are they free? Client first, attributes, these other things that we've created, why are they just given away for free? And so I got to kind of explain, like, one, we really like to provide value and help the community. We love seeing other freelancers and agencies grow and get better at their craft. So we provide these tools that they can do that for free. And then the other kind of piece is, when you're doing marketing and putting out these free products, there begins to develop this sense of authority around the brand of Finsweet that uh, Finsweet, obviously benefits from, but also you as a freelancer, as an agency, you can then say, okay, I am using this tool that was created by a trusted group. They've developed this authority in the market. They've developed this authority in the niche. And I am actually leaning on those. And so that also creates some authority. You're borrowing that authority when you're talking to your clients.
And this is valuable. We want you to do this. This will really help you as a new developer. You can use it at any stage of your career, but as a brand new developer, I definitely want you to use this, because that brand authority is powerful. The idea that other people are using this is powerful. Let's move into the tech side of it. You talked a little bit about Reloom. We will kind of call this tech, not really. It's more of a resource, but this idea that there are projects out there that are dedicated to building on top of client first. This is a huge win, a huge benefit. Other component libraries don't focus on a known naming convention, at least not that I'm
Right.
aware of. And that may
Right.
not be a completely valid statement, but
Yeah, there
Reloom is
could be some.
huge, right? Reloom is big, and it's based in client first. We love that. Now, the real tech, folders.
Mhm.
This is kind of the next level here. The folders concept is so exciting to me because it uses an application along with the naming convention to give you an additional feature within Webflow. Folders. So as long as you use client first, the folders naming convention, automatically, just by using Finsweet extension, you'll be able to visualize the class folders inside your project. And you can organize these folders however you want. So maybe I want a folder for all of the classes for the style guide. Maybe I want a folder for all of the text custom classes,
Mhm.
whatever it may be. You can organize these folders in any way that you see fit. And just by using the convention and this piece of tech, you now get a new feature. And this continues to happen. We're not going to stop with this. So the fluid responsive, this came before folders. But just by using client first, the way that we have put it in the docs, we're adding a new feature to your already created projects. You don't have to update anything. You just have to use this fluid responsive tool, and automatically you can create a very fluid scaling website. That tool is epic. It's so, if you use that tool, you don't have to create another breakpoint on top of the base breakpoint in Webflow. We're big fans of not creating that breakpoint
The
above
extra
the
larger
991,
breakpoint. Yeah.
the larger ones. You don't need them with the fluid responsive tool. This again is going to lessen the maintenance, increase the scalability of the project. So it's you, the tech involved, it gives you that next level that comes with client first.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think of, this kind of brings to mind Laravel, which is a PHP framework. And at its core, it's just a framework for building with PHP. So it offers a ton of value just in the fact that it's a framework. And then there's also this huge ecosystem of products and other templates and things like that that have come out around Laravel as a framework. So I think Client First provides a similar value in that it's a naming convention, kind of gives you some structure. And then also on top of that, you're getting this ecosystem that you now have access to of other tech, as Joe was saying, on top of that, that's going to provide benefit, within your project.
And show that lead a folder structure of your past site, a past build. We talked a lot about
That's
Loom
scary.
video recordings earlier. No, a good
A good
project.
one. Okay.
A good, yeah. So we have a lead. We're going to go back one project and just do a quick video. Hey, look at this folder structure that we created for this company. It's organized. It's easy to read. Look at all the class organizations that we have. We can do the same thing with your project. And actually, this blog folder system would be set up exactly the same way in your project. We'd follow the same structure here. So you'd be able to see this in your project. Huge.
Nice.
This is a huge selling point. It makes people go from maybe I'm interested to wow, I need to work with this person.
Yep. Yeah. And
Let's bring
then,
up from
you go ahead and as you bring it up, we can talk about like the fact that there are free clonables. There's a style guide, a starter kit basically that you can start from for new projects. There are free Figma starter designs. All of this stuff kind of packs on top of that as additional quote unquote tech that you can sell along with Client First.
And this will transition really well into that. Let's bring up from Content Nest. Reloom in IMO is the best entry learning point for anyone starting with Client First. But I even feel after reading the documentation 2x, I still don't know if I'm naming things the right way. Well, this is a good comment. Yeah, some people are visual learners. So what we did was we released the docs, and for the past month or so, just been recording live builds. So if you go to our YouTube channel, I think there's about 6 live builds, maybe 5 client first live builds where I'm just going through and building in client first. This is a great way to learn for many people. And Reloom does that also, being able to copy that and see how Reloom is naming them. But Content Nest, I will suggest to you, just start naming things. Don't overthink it. The documentation, it can't give exact naming for a project because every project's different. It gives you the framework to properly name things based on your project. So that's why there's no specific naming inside the docs, because we don't want to say, hey, you have to name every project like this. This is the baseline for projects, because every project is unique and needs a unique perspective. So Content Nest, just start doing it. At the end of the project, look at the folders and look at what you did wrong. What's not organized? What can be better in the next build? What should I have done in the beginning? How should I have named this in the beginning? And what's great about folders is you can do a lot of those renamings afterwards. So if you don't know how to name things, you can name them, just stop thinking, name it, and then in 20 minutes or 20 days later, you can go and edit that folder name and rename every class in the folder. So don't overthink it, just do it. That would be my suggestion. in addition to watching the live builds and playing with Reloom.
Yeah, I agree 100%.
Okay, so we are now starting to let's transition into the resources. Did you have anything more to say about resources, or how, the kind of resources
Um,
included?
I don't think so. I think we've touched on a lot of it, and we'll probably bring up some things if we miss it here in the last piece.
Nice. Let's bring up a comment from Duncan Prince. Earlier in the episode, we asked Duncan a little bit more of his story about why a client loved Client First, and he has a really nice response here. Duncan Prince says the client was a bit hesitant using Webflow at first, but once I showed them the power and the ease of using Webflow out of the box, they warmed up a bit. Next comment. Some of their concerns were around scalability and handoff and vendor change. The "if I get hit by a bus" comment. Since I'm a freelancer, that's a reasonable concern. Of course it is. So we get a lot of clients that are concerned about scalability, handoff, and vendor change, right? Some people come to us and say, hey, what if we build the site and we start working with someone else the next day? This is something that people say. It's a way to manage your products and your web properties and your applications that
Yep.
you maybe they can rely on us for 5 years, but maybe they can't, and maybe they want to
Mhm.
change. So yeah, Duncan, this is a great share. Jesse, we have another minute until we start winding down the show with some nice announcements.
Cool. So I think we can talk a little bit briefly about how Finsweet, how we talk about Client First when we're talking with prospective clients. And I think in general, we understand, a lot of our clients are probably coming to us either by referral or through, some other means, and they may have some understanding of who Finsweet is. So we've got that kind of piece kind of knocked out a little bit for most conversations. And so the approach we take is to tell the story of why Client First was created. And so that kind of in bullet points is we had a relatively large Webflow team of developers that we wanted to be, we wanted them all speaking the same language when they're building. We wanted them to build in similar structure and to be able to hand off projects between each other if needed. So sometimes we have a developer that will build the kind of MVP or the main project, and then we might hand it off to another dev on the team to do that ongoing maintenance. So that handoff there, we need them to be speaking the same language when they're building. And then the second point is we also wanted to be able to, when we launch projects, to have them built in a way that our clients could look at it in the navigator or however they're looking at the project, and understand what each section is meant for. So we kind of talked about this earlier. And then the third point, which we're totally fine with, is maybe they want to pick up a different freelancer or a different agency down the road, or they bring on new Webflow hires internally. Uh, Client First is something that everyone can learn, and it's easily accessible. It's out there. A bunch of people already have it. So, we wanted people to be able to work with other vendors if they choose, or bring in internal devs, and that's totally fine with us. So, we were trying to create something that would kind of fill those gaps, and that was kind of what Client First became. So we tell that story, and then we get into some of these points depending on how the conversation goes on. What's the tech behind it? What are the other value points? What can you do with it? Is it scalable, etc. So we start with the story, and then we kind of evolve the conversation with whatever the client needs or is interested in.
Love it. I get excited about this. This is really important to us, of course. So
Yeah.
we're going to continue managing Client First. We're going to continue spreading Client First. We're translating Client First into like 12 languages or more than that. I don't know. Victoria, who's behind on our live stream, is managing the translation project, and we have a lot of people translating Client First. So this is something that will continue to grow, continue to flourish. And as more people use Client First, it becomes more and more powerful. So if you're not using Client First, of course, I have to recommend that you use Client First. And if you do use Client First, I really hope that you learn something valuable in this video. If you have not tried to sell Client First, try it. If you've tried it, try a method that we've talked about in this video. It could change your close rate from 30% to 50% or 30% to 80%. This could be a huge change in your business. We're at the hour. Final announcements here. Thank you all for coming. Please like the video if you have not already. That really helps us. And we have tomorrow the Speed Build Challenge. We are going to be supporting Rohan, our head of operations here at Finsweet, tomorrow, 1 p.m. Eastern. That's on Webflow's YouTube channel. And on Thursday, we are going live with Kevin Levine on Community Day. Kevin Levine is an HR professional and Webflow hobbyist helping local and small businesses. Going to be a great chat. And then on Friday, we are coding custom GSAP JavaScript animations in Webflow with Alex Iglesias. That's it for today. Jesse, please give a final send-off goodbye to the audience.
Thank you, guys. Have a great week, and we'll see you on the next one.
Thanks, everyone. Talk soon.